It was supposed to be a quiet night. Just me, a borrowed couch, and the comfort of my brother's apartment. But when the door opened past midnight, when his roommate stumbled in, drunk, laughing, and leaning against the wall, everything changed. What happens when a simple favor turns into a forbidden attraction? This isn't just a BL webtoon moment. This is a yaoi manhwa love story about timing, temptation, and the kind of night that rewrites your heart. Daniel was 21, caught somewhere between the boy he used to be and the man he wasn't sure he'd ever become. On the outside, he looked like any other college student. Slim, dark hair that never stayed in place no matter how often he combed it. A wardrobe filled with comfortable hoodies and worn jeans. But inside, Daniel carried a quietness that made him stand apart. He wasn't the loudest voice in a classroom. He wasn't the guy everyone noticed when he walked into a party. He was the type who slipped into a room unnoticed, tucked himself into the corner with his headphones, and let the world move around him. Books were his companions, his safe spaces. Music was his shield. Conversations, they were exhausting, too unpredictable, too vulnerable. Still, Daniel wasn't unhappy. Not exactly. His days were filled with routines, lectures in the mornings, shifts at the library in the afternoons, late-night study sessions in the quiet of his dorm room. It was predictable, comfortable, safe. But comfort doesn't last forever. It started with a notice taped to the door of his dorm building. Renovations. Mandatory evacuation. 2 weeks. Daniel had stared at the paper, reading the words over and over as if they might rearrange themselves into something less disruptive. But they didn't. The message was clear. He needed to leave. Some students scrambled for hotels. Others couch-surfed with friends or returned home if they lived close enough. Daniel, though, he didn't have that many options. His world was small, his circle smaller. That's when his brother Ryan stepped in. Ryan was older by 6 years, already working, already living the life Daniel wasn't sure he'd ever figure out. Where Daniel was quiet, Ryan was confident. Where Daniel hesitated, Ryan leaped. They weren't opposites exactly, but their lives felt like they had been drawn with completely different strokes. Still, Ryan was family, and family meant safety. "Come stay with me," Ryan said over the phone, his voice as casual as ever. "It's only temporary. Couch is yours, fridge is stocked. You'll survive." Daniel had hesitated. "Are you sure? I don't want to be a burden." "You're my brother," Ryan replied, simply, shutting down the thought before it could root itself in Daniel's mind. And just like that, the decision was made. The apartment was on the edge of the city, tucked into a busy street where neon lights bled into the night and the sound of traffic hummed like background music. It wasn't big. 2 bedrooms, 1 shared living space, a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a catalogue if you ignored the stack of dirty dishes. But compared to Daniel's cramped dorm room, it felt almost luxurious. Still, Daniel couldn't ignore one detail. Ryan didn't live alone. The name surfaced casually, almost like a warning. "Ethan." "Don't worry," Ryan said when Daniel asked. "He's cool, keeps to himself. He won't bother you." But Ryan's tone, casual as it was, carried something Daniel couldn't quite place. And so Daniel found himself standing at the doorway of the apartment, suitcase in hand, nerves crawling beneath his skin. He told himself it was temporary, just a week or 2. Long enough for the dorm repairs to finish, short enough that he wouldn't intrude too deeply into his brother's life. The couch was surprisingly comfortable, a blanket draped over the armrest, a pillow tossed carelessly against the side. It smelled faintly of detergent and something else, something warm, like cologne lingering in the fabric. That first night, Daniel unpacked only the essentials: a few shirts, his laptop, a sketchbook he barely showed anyone. He set his headphones beside him, letting music fill the silence as he tried to convince himself this was fine. But there was one detail he couldn't ignore even if he tried. The second bedroom door, closed, silent. A reminder that the space wasn't entirely his, that someone else lived just a few steps away. Someone he hadn't met yet. Days passed in quiet rhythm. Ryan came and went, busy with work. Daniel adjusted to the apartment, slipping into the couch life routine. He made coffee in the mornings, tiptoed around the kitchen, tried not to intrude. And yet he couldn't stop noticing the little traces of the other presence. A jacket slung over the back of a chair, sneakers by the door, larger than Ryan's, a faint scent of aftershave in the bathroom, all belonging to Ethan. Daniel learned about him in fragments. Ryan's offhand comments, the sound of his voice through the wall, late at night, low and steady on phone calls. A laugh that carried even when Daniel couldn't make out the words. But Ethan himself remained unseen, like a character introduced only through shadows, a presence Daniel felt before he ever truly encountered it. And maybe that was why the anticipation grew, because every time Daniel heard footsteps in the hallway, he wondered. Every time the apartment door clicked open, his chest tightened. Would tonight be the night he met him? And what would Ethan think, seeing Ryan's quiet younger brother camped out on the couch, headphones in, trying not to look out of place? Daniel told himself it didn't matter, that Ethan was just a roommate, that he wouldn't care. But late at night, staring at the ceiling of a borrowed couch, Daniel couldn't silence the thought. Because stories like this, the ones he read in webtoons, the ones whispered in fan forums, always began the same way. A chance encounter, a temporary arrangement, two lives brushing against each other until something sparked. Daniel shook his head, scolding himself. This wasn't fiction. This was real life. And yet, the story was only just beginning. The only problem, Ryan shares that apartment with someone else. Enter Ethan, Ryan's roommate, older, confident, the type who walks into a room and makes everyone notice without trying. Where Daniel is soft edges and shy glances, Ethan is sharp smiles and careless laughter. A classic BL webtoon dynamic, opposites destined to collide. Daniel agrees to stay just for a week. His brother promises the couch is free, the fridge is stocked, and Ethan, well, he minds his own business. But stories like these rarely stay so simple. The apartment itself sets the stage. 2 bedrooms, 1 shared living space, a couch that feels too close to the kitchen, too exposed, as if every move is on display. The kind of space where privacy feels like a luxury, where silence is loaded and footsteps in the hallway mean everything. It isn't a grand place, not by any stretch. The paint is chipped in places, and the blinds never quite close right, letting slivers of city light spill across the floor at night. The hum of traffic filters through the windows, and sometimes you can hear the laughter of strangers in the street below. But within these 4 walls, it feels different, smaller, intimate, a stage where lives overlap in ways you can't avoid. At first, Ethan barely notices Daniel. He's always coming and going, a blur of motion in and out of the apartment. Sometimes Daniel hears the jingle of keys late at night, the slam of the door as Ethan stumbles in, shoulders heavy from exhaustion. Other nights, he brings friends, voices Daniel doesn't recognize, laughter spilling through the living room like a wave that drowns out his thoughts. Then there are mornings when Ethan is already gone, before Daniel wakes, leaving behind only the faint trace of his cologne in the hall. Ethan moves through the space like it belongs entirely to him. Daniel feels more like a guest, careful not to take up too much room, careful not to leave a footprint. But Daniel notices him. He can't help it. It starts small, the way obsessions always do. The sound of his footsteps approaching from the hallway. The deep timbre of his voice as he talks on the phone. Steady, confident, easy. The curve of his silhouette when Daniel glimpses him passing by the couch late at night, lit only by the glow of his phone. Daniel tells himself he's only paying attention because the apartment is small, because when you live in such close quarters, it's impossible not to notice the other person. But the truth runs deeper, and Daniel knows it. Ethan is magnetic. Not in the loud, obvious way that some people are. Ethan doesn't demand attention. He simply draws it, effortlessly. He has a presence that fills a room even when he says nothing. The casualness of the way he drapes his jacket over a chair. The easy way he leans against the kitchen counter with a glass of water in hand. The way his laughter, low, unguarded, carries through the thin apartment walls late at night. For Daniel, every detail becomes a story. Every glance becomes a thread he pulls too tightly. He notices the little things. How Ethan's hair falls into his eyes after a long day. How his smile tilts more to one side when he's teasing Ryan. How his voice softens unexpectedly in moments when he doesn't think anyone is listening. Daniel notices, and then he pretends he doesn't. Because what else can he do? He's just Ryan's younger brother, a temporary guest, a shadow taking up space on the couch. Ethan barely even looks at him most days, let alone speaks. And when he does, it's usually in passing. A nod, a polite, hey, a question about the Wi-Fi password or whether there's milk left in the fridge. Nothing that means anything. Nothing that lingers. At least, not for Ethan. For Daniel, every word feels heavier than it should. He remembers them, replays them in his head long after the moment has passed, wonders if there was something more hidden in the tone, in the way Ethan's gaze flickered, in the way his lips curled around the word. And when the apartment quiets, when Ryan is gone and the world feels smaller, Daniel feels the weight of Ethan's presence more than ever. The sound of a door opening down the hall makes his chest tighten. The creak of floorboards makes him hold his breath. He imagines Ethan standing there just out of sight. Imagines him leaning against the door frame, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. Imagines him noticing. Because that's all Daniel wants, in the quiet honesty of his own mind, to be noticed, to matter. To not just exist in the corner of this borrowed space, but to be seen. And maybe, just maybe, Ethan has noticed. It happens in fleeting moments, so small that Daniel almost convinces himself he's imagining them. The way Ethan's gaze lingers a second too long when they pass in the kitchen. The way his smirk curves when Daniel stammers through a polite reply. The way his arm brushes Daniel's as they both reach for a glass on the counter. Tiny collisions, accidents maybe. But to Daniel, they feel monumental. They leave him lying awake on the couch at night, staring at the ceiling, his heart refusing to slow. And so the apartment becomes something more than just a space. It becomes a story in itself. The narrow hallway where their shoulders almost touch when passing. The couch where Daniel pretends to be absorbed in his book while secretly listening to Ethan's laughter. The kitchen counter where their hands nearly brush, sparking a tension neither speaks aloud. The apartment is small, too small to hide what lingers between them. Privacy is impossible, and maybe that's what makes it dangerous. Because Daniel knows this story isn't supposed to happen. He's not supposed to feel this way. Not about his brother's roommate, not about someone who barely knows him. He's supposed to be temporary, invisible, a ghost who passes through and leaves no trace. But ghosts don't feel their hearts pound when someone walks into the room. Ghosts don't memorize the sound of someone's voice like a song they can't stop humming. Ghosts don't want, and Daniel wants. He wants the glances to mean something. He wants the accidents to be intentional. He wants Ethan to see him, not just as Ryan's younger brother, not just as the quiet boy on the couch, but as someone worth noticing. It's reckless, it's foolish, it's dangerous, but it's already too late. Because the apartment, with its cramped spaces and thin walls, has already woven them together in ways Daniel can't untangle. And he's starting to wonder, when Ethan finally does notice, what will happen then? The sound of Ethan's laughter through the thin walls, the casual way he leans against door frames, the scent of cologne lingering in the air. It's the beginning of every yaoi manoir romance, the kind where the quiet one pretends not to care, while the confident one seems untouchable. And yet, the setup is clear. Daniel's quiet routine will be disrupted, because Ethan isn't just a roommate, he's a storm waiting to happen. It happens on the third night. Ryan is away, pulled into a last-minute business trip that will keep him gone for a few days. For Daniel, the apartment feels strangely lighter without his brother there. Quieter, yes, but not empty. The hum of the fridge in the kitchen, the faint glow of street lamps through the blinds, and the soft clicking of his laptop keys create a rhythm he finds comforting. He's curled up on the couch with a blanket draped around him, the glow of the screen casting shadows across his face. A mug of tea rests precariously on the coffee table. His world is simple in this moment, contained within the safe bubble of flickering city light and the soft cocoon of being alone. He doesn't expect it to break, but it does. The front door opens. Daniel looks up, startled. Ethan stumbles in, not with the usual sharp presence Daniel has grown used to. The controlled stride, the deliberate posture. Tonight, Ethan is unguarded. His shirt hangs loose, collar tucked open as if he had given up halfway through straightening himself before walking in. The fabric clings in odd places, falling off one shoulder as though it couldn't decide if it belonged to him at all. His cheeks are flushed, not the faint pink of exertion, but the deep, restless warmth of someone who has been drinking, who has let the night unravel them. And then there are his eyes. Heavy-lidded, yes. Sleepy maybe, but sharp enough to find their target the moment the door shuts behind him. Daniel. The weight of that gaze pins him in place. On most nights, Ethan sweeps through the apartment like he owns it. His posture is straight, his footsteps deliberate, his voice clipped and efficient. He rarely lingers in common spaces, preferring the sanctuary of his room or the city streets, but tonight, everything about him is different. There's a looseness to his body, a tilt to his smile, a drag in his movements that Daniel has never seen before. His confidence is still there, but blurred, smeared at the edges. Carelessness clings to him like an invisible second skin. Daniel sits on the couch, blanket wrapped around him, laptop forgotten. He knows he should look away, knows he should bury his eyes back into the glowing screen, pretend not to notice, pretend he isn't staring. But he can't. Every detail of Ethan feels amplified under the dim light of the apartment. The way his hair falls messily across his forehead, the faint sheen of sweat along his collarbone, the deep line of his throat when he swallows. Daniel's breath hitches. Ethan doesn't stumble, not really. His steps are slow, but sure enough to carry him forward. He toes off his shoes with a lazy kick, sending them sliding across the floor. then shrugs his jacket from his shoulders and lets it fall, uncaring, crumpled at the door. Daniel watches it drop, eyes flicking to the mess instinctively. Ethan never leaves his things lying around. Normally he is precise, clean, ordered. Seeing him abandon something so casually makes Daniel's chest tighten, as though he is glimpsing a side of Ethan he was never meant to see. And then Ethan speaks, still awake. His voice is lower than usual, roughened by alcohol. Daniel's throat goes dry. Yeah. The word slips out, too small, too thin. His voice cracks slightly on the edge of it. He clears his throat, tries again. Yeah, I couldn't sleep. Ethan's lips curve. Not into his usual smirk, not into his polite half-smile, but something lazier, something slower. His eyes linger on Daniel in a way that makes the apartment suddenly feel much smaller. Couldn't sleep, Ethan repeats, as though testing the words on his tongue. Daniel shifts under the blanket, pulling it tighter around his body. His laptop sits like a shield in front of him, but it feels useless. The glow of the screen is drowned out by the warmth radiating from Ethan's presence. Ethan steps forward, closing the distance between them. The sound of his footsteps against the hardwood is soft but deliberate. Daniel feels everyone like a thud in his chest. He knows Ethan should be heading to his room, closing the door, disappearing behind the barrier that always keeps him safely separate. But he isn't. He's coming closer. When he reaches the couch, Ethan doesn't hesitate. He drops down beside Daniel, not at the far end, not with a safe cushion of space between them, but close, so close their shoulders nearly brush. Daniel's breath catches. The blanket feels suffocating now, trapping heat, trapping air. The glow of the laptop only illuminates the sharp angle of Ethan's jaw, the shadow under his eyes, the curve of his mouth. Daniel swallows hard. You're back late. Ethan leans back against the couch, tilting his head until it rests lazily against the cushion. His eyes close for a moment, lashes brushing against his flushed skin. When he speaks, his voice is soft, almost slurred, but not enough to hide the meaning. Yeah, lost track of time. Silence stretches. Daniel's hands grip the edge of his blanket, knuckles whitening. He doesn't know what to say, doesn't know where to look. The city lights bleed through the blinds, casting stripes of gold and shadow across Ethan's face. When Ethan opens his eyes again, they lock onto Daniel's instantly. You're always so quiet. The words are simple, but the way they're spoken, low, careful, almost intimate, makes Daniel's chest clench. I guess so, Daniel stammers. Ethan tilts his head, studying him. Why? The question feels dangerous. Too direct, too close to something Daniel has spent years avoiding. He laughs nervously, looking away. I don't know. Just, that's how I am. Ethan doesn't respond right away. He shifts, one arm draping across the back of the couch, his body angling closer to Daniel. The movement is casual, but it feels anything but. Daniel can feel the warmth of him, radiating through the blanket, through the air. His heart beats so hard he's afraid Ethan can hear it. You don't have to be, Ethan says finally, his voice low. Daniel's head snaps toward him, eyes wide. What? You don't have to be quiet. Not with me. The words land heavy, pressing into Daniel's chest, lodging in his throat. For a moment he can't breathe. Ethan's gaze doesn't waver. Even drunk, even blurred, there is clarity in the way he looks at Daniel, as though he sees him, really sees him, in a way no one else ever has. Daniel's lips part, but no words come. His throat is dry, his mind tangled. Ethan smirks faintly, leaning back, closing his eyes again. Forget it, he mutters, though the weight of his words lingers in the air between them. But Daniel doesn't forget. He can't. The apartment feels different now, charged, alive. Every sound is magnified. The hum of the fridge, the ticking of the clock, the faint rasp of Ethan's breathing. Daniel sits frozen, staring at the man beside him. Ethan's head tilts slightly toward him, as if unconsciously leaning closer. His arm rests along the back of the couch, fingers brushing the edge of Daniel's blanket. Not touching him, but close enough that Daniel can feel the heat, the possibility. Daniel swallows hard. He should move. He should put space between them, retreat into safety. But he doesn't. He sits there, heart pounding, breath shallow, waiting. And in that waiting, something shifts. Ethan exhales slowly, his lips parting, his voice a murmur, so soft Daniel almost doesn't hear it. Daniel. The sound of his name from Ethan's lips sends a shiver down his spine. He turns, eyes wide. But Ethan doesn't continue. His lashes are lowered, his mouth relaxed, his body loose against the couch. Daniel can't tell if it was deliberate or if it was the alcohol speaking for him, but the echo of it, his name whispered in that low, husky voice, burns in his chest, and he knows. Tonight something has changed. The careful distance, the unspoken walls, they're cracking, and Daniel, no matter how hard he tries, can't pretend he doesn't feel it. He's drunk, not sloppy drunk, not the kind that slurs and collapses, but the kind that makes confidence blur into carelessness, the kind that loosens the edges of control, leaving something raw, something unpolished. And for Daniel, watching from the couch, it feels like watching someone he doesn't fully know step into the apartment. Daniel, Ethan says, voice low, stretched thin by alcohol. Daniel swallows. You're, home. The words are obvious, stupid, but they're all he can manage. Ethan's smirk curls slowly, tugging at the corner of his lips. Home, he repeats, as if the word itself is something new, something heavier. He kicks off his shoes with less grace than usual and lets his jacket slide from his shoulders, landing in a heap on the floor. He doesn't bother picking it up. Daniel watches the small rebellion, the way Ethan moves like the apartment bends around him. Ethan's gaze lingers on him. Daniel shifts under the weight of it, clutching the blanket tighter. Did you have a good time? The question feels small, thin, like tossing a pebble into an ocean. Ethan chuckles, low and unsteady. He runs a hand through his hair, mussing it further. Good time, he echoes. Yeah, sure. There's something in his voice, something Daniel can't name. Not happiness, not regret. Something in between, something blurred. Ethan steps closer, not towards his own room, not towards the kitchen, towards the couch, towards Daniel. The air feels different, suddenly charged. Daniel's heart stumbles against his ribs. You're up late, Ethan says, his voice quieter now, almost curious. Daniel nods. Couldn't sleep, just working on something. Ethan leans against the back of the couch, too close. His body radiates warmth, his cologne mixed with the faint scent of alcohol. Daniel can feel it sinking into the blanket, into his skin. What kind of something? Ethan asks. Daniel hesitates. Just school stuff. Notes. Ethan hums, not fully buying it. His gaze flickers to the laptop screen, then back to Daniel's face. He doesn't press further. For a moment, silence stretches. But it isn't empty. It's thick, heavy, loaded. Ethan's hand brushes the back of the couch, his fingers drumming lightly. Then, with a motion too casual to be truly casual, he drops onto the couch beside Daniel, not on the far end, not at a polite distance. Right there, close enough that their shoulders nearly touch. Daniel freezes. The blanket feels suddenly suffocating. His laptop, once a shield, is now useless, glowing with words he can't even read. His pulse is too loud in his ears. Ethan tilts his head back against the couch cushion, closing his eyes for a second. His throat bobs with a swallow. Then his eyes open again, focused, sharp, lingering on Daniel. "You're quiet," Ethan murmurs. Daniel forces a laugh, thin and shaky. "Always am." Ethan studies him, really studies him. And Daniel feels it. The way those dark eyes map him, trace him, peel away whatever armor he thought he had. The alcohol makes Ethan looser, but it doesn't make him blind. Daniel shifts, hugging his knees under the blanket. He tries to focus on the laptop, on anything else. But Ethan's presence anchors him, drags every thought back. "You know," Ethan says slowly, voice dipping low, "you don't have to be so tense around me." Daniel blinks, startled. I'm not tense." Ethan's smirk deepens, soft but knowing. "You are." The words land heavy. Daniel doesn't know what to do with them. He swallows. "You're drunk." "Maybe." Ethan leans closer, his shoulder brushing Daniel's, deliberate this time. "But that doesn't make me wrong." The air crackles. Daniel feels it in his chest, in his stomach, in the tips of his fingers. Ethan watches him, silent, waiting. And Daniel, he can't move, he can't breathe. He can't decide if this is real or just a trick of alcohol and late-night shadows. But he knows one thing. In this cramped apartment, with his brother gone, with Ethan sitting so close he can feel the heat of him, nothing is the same anymore. The silence stretches, heavy and fragile, a thread waiting to snap. Ethan breaks it with a whisper. "Daniel." The sound of his name in Ethan's voice feels dangerous. Daniel grips the blanket tighter, eyes wide. "Yeah?" Ethan's lips curl. Not in a smirk this time, but something softer, something unreadable. "Nothing," he murmurs, leaning back against the couch, though his body still hums with closeness. But Daniel knows. It isn't nothing. It's everything. "Didn't know you were still up," Ethan slurs, leaning on the wall. Daniel stiffens. "I was just studying." Their eyes meet. For the first time, Daniel feels seen, not as Ryan's younger brother, not as a guest taking up space, but as himself. Ethan laughs. It's low, rough, different from the daytime. He crosses the room, drops his keys on the counter, and sinks onto the couch. Too close. Daniel freezes. The air shifts. "So," Ethan says, voice softer now, "you're Ryan's little brother. Never thought he'd let someone crash here." Daniel swallows. "Just for a week." But Ethan leans closer, his shoulder brushing Daniel's. "A week's a long time." It's a moment charged with something unspoken. BL fans know this trope well. The late-night encounter, the blurred lines between danger and desire. Daniel tries to look away, but Ethan notices. His smirk curves. "You're nervous." "I'm not," Daniel insists, though his voice betrays him. And that's when Ethan does something unexpected. He doesn't tease further. Instead, he tilts his head back, closing his eyes, whispering, "It's been a rough night." The walls fall. For the first time, Ethan looks less like the untouchable roommate and more like a person, vulnerable, human. Daniel sits there, torn, every instinct screams to retreat, but another voice, quieter, deeper, tells him to stay. The night unfolds slowly. Conversations about nothing turn into confessions about everything. Ethan talks about his job, his exhaustion, his loneliness hidden beneath the bravado, and Daniel listens. Every brush of hands while passing the remote, every accidental glance too long, every silence heavy with possibility. It's the kind of tension only BL webtoons master, a push and pull that feels endless, intoxicating, dangerous, because Daniel knows. This isn't just banter. This is a line, and they're standing too close to it. The turning point comes when Daniel tries to retreat. "I should sleep," he says, standing. His voice trembles, but Ethan grabs his wrist. Not hard, just enough. "Stay." One word. Daniel's breath catches. He looks down at Ethan, messy hair, tired eyes, that playful smirk softened into something else entirely. It's no longer a game, it's a plea. Ethan shifts closer, his hand still warm on Daniel's wrist. The silence between them is thunderous, and then it happens. Ethan leans in, slowly, giving Daniel every chance to pull away, but Daniel doesn't move. He can't. His heart is pounding, his chest tight, his world spinning. Their lips meet, soft, hesitant, electric, a kiss that feels both inevitable and impossible. The room disappears, the city outside falls silent, it's just them. And when Ethan pulls back, whispering, "Didn't think I'd want this, but I do," Daniel realizes the truth. This night has changed everything. The morning light feels different. Ethan isn't the storm anymore. He's sitting at the counter drinking coffee, watching Daniel with a quiet smile. They don't talk about what happened. Not yet. But something has shifted. A line has been crossed, and there's no going back. Daniel realizes that what began as a temporary crash on his brother's couch has become something else entirely. A story of longing, discovery, and a love he never expected. Because love doesn't wait for perfect timing. Sometimes it arrives drunk at midnight, sits too close on the couch, and changes your world forever. On-screen keywords: BL romance ending, yaoi love story reflection, roommates to lovers BL. So what do you think? Was this love story sweet, emotional, or just too intense to handle? Drop your reaction in the comments. Heartbroken, cute, or forbidden but perfect. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and check the description for full BL story links and more yaoi manhwa recommendations. Because every night could be the start of a new BL romance.